Hey everyone, Larry Walsh here. This is Changing Channels, and today I want to talk with you about distribution, but not distribution in the usual sense that I do, where I talk about its value and its contribution to vendors. No, today I want to talk about distribution in terms of applicable value and market penetration, specifically distribution in North America. I have this conversation frequently where people say, the rest of the world, when it comes to distribution in the rest of the world, it's fragmented. You go to Europe, there's hundreds of distributors. You go to Asia, it's hundreds of distributors. North America, we got the big three: Ingram, TD Synnex, and Arrow. You also have other distributors that, it's more specialty or more niche. D&H servicing the mid-market and SMB, scan sources out there with some interesting lines. And then you got a few others out there that aren't doing, that don't seem to have much market share or penetration. Not necessarily true, but okay, that's how the story goes. I want to talk about how distribution in North America isn't sewn up, that the market is open for newcomers as well as those that want to be disruptive. And it's particularly open for those that want to go along a specialty scene like cybersecurity. And that's where our guests come in today, Exclusive Networks. Now, Exclusive Networks, it's a big distribution brand in the rest of the world, except for North America, although it's had North America presence for a while. Here it is growing, and it looks like it's going to take on even higher levels of performance. It has new leadership. Jason Beal became president of Exclusive Networks last year, and recently Justin Crotty joined Exclusive Networks as vice president of services and support. These are two North American distribution veterans. I actually should say Jason's actually done a lot of work outside North America as well. But the reality is that you have two real titans that are now heading this specialty distribution ship, and they have big plans. So we've invited them to come on Changing Channels to talk about what they're doing in Exclusive, what they see as the opportunity to be disruptive by applying the cybersecurity space and really providing different levels of value and value propositions to vendors, to their security partners, as well as ultimately the customer. This is Changing Channels. I'm Larry Walsh. Let's get into it. Jason Beal, Justin Crotty, thanks for joining us here on Changing Channels.
Larry, good to see you. Thanks for having us.
Larry, Justin? Good to see you again. Appreciate it.
Oh, no. Hey, Justin, congratulations on joining Exclusive.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to start with the obvious question here. I mean, you were a big figure in distribution before, and you've been working outside at a vendor for a long time. So, what brought you back in, and why Exclusive?
Well, I mean, yeah, I kind of grew up in distribution. If you visit any natural history museum, you might see some evidence of that. So it's been a while, but
I thought I saw something like you in Liberia tar pits or something. I mean,
I really like distribution. I think the value is really strong. I think distributors serve a really important component in the ecosystem. I've missed being part of the big ecosystem and kind of the tech ecology. At a vendor, a lot of times, and although we were 100% channel, we didn't have a distribution footprint. So I missed that sort of spot in the ecosystem. And I think Exclusive's doing some really cool things around services and things like that, which is obviously something I've been passionate about for a long time.
Yeah. So, Jason, you're still relatively new to Exclusive. You also came out of the proving ground of California that is known as Ingram. What was it that appealed to you about Exclusive? What makes it different?
Yeah, so I've known Exclusive for almost 20 years, since I was living in Belgium and running the distribution channel and the commercial channel for a cybersecurity leader, and got to know Exclusive early on. The culture, a lot of innovation, very entrepreneurial, deep expertise, really good marketing capabilities. So I knew a lot of the original owners in the different countries and the founding group. And so I've been a fan for a long time, and then still had a lot of different relationships. So I too had started my career both at a domestic value-added distributor in the enterprise content management space, and then went to a global broadliner in 2 theaters, and then went to 3 different vendors and had different theater and global roles. And you, as Justin mentioned, you do learn a lot. You have a certain perspective. I used to think about this term called vendor myopia, where kind of your world gets a little bit smaller when you're just working with one vendor. And so, yeah, I wanted to come back to the fruitful and fertile pastures of distribution, and there was no other place than exclusive.
Fertile pastures of distribution. I'm not sure if I'm ever going to use that one again. As I told you both, is that Channelnomics actually had been working with exclusive for a while before both of you, obviously before you joined, Justin, Jason, before you. We do a lot in distribution around the world, and whenever some vendor comes to us and say we need to optimize, I say, you mean Europe? They go, yeah, it's always Europe. North America is never seen as a problem for distribution because it's so well defined. In fact, some would even say it's locked up. Is that you got Ingram, you got TD SYNNEX, you got Arrow on the enterprise, SMB mid-market, you got D&H. There's a couple out there like you, but what makes it do what I should say, let's ask the question, do we need to dispel the notion that North America is locked up in distribution, that there is no entry point for alternatives to the big 3?
So let me take that, and then I'll hand over to Justin, probably focus specifically on the professional and technical services needs of vendors and partners. But I'll answer in 2 ways, Larry. On the one hand, I like to think about distribution these days as a channel services provider, right? We provide services across the entire customer lifecycle and across the entire, let's call it, channel lifecycle. Even if the vendors can do some of the transactional pieces themselves, most vendors with whom we speak have a need for net new logo acquisition, and they have a need for churn reduction, particularly on the long tail. Those are 2 examples of services that distribution, value-added distribution with a real high-touch, white glove service, real services-oriented approach, we can help them with. Sure, we can do quote to cash, the transactional piece, but new logo acquisition, both new partner logos, selling and producing, and then that new end user logo are an area where we have really good capabilities through demand generation, business intelligence, etc. And then again, at the end, on the kind of the proverbial R in the layer approach, to retain, drive renewals, and reduce the churn is another service where vendors need us, whether it's international or domestic. Then the other side of the equation is, broadliners, volume players versus real specialists, right? We have, since our inception, been focused on cybersecurity and secure networking. We have an incredible capability there. Our ratio, for instance, of engineering to sales is, unlike any other distributor that's out there. And what we've heard as the distributors who have, the other ones have gotten larger, it's really hard for them to, one, incubate new vendors, the emerging vendors. It's hard for them to spend a lot of time and resource on vendors that are doing below a certain threshold of annual revenue or annual margin. And then the same thing with partners. We've heard a lot of feedback recently that some of the larger distributors may just be sending partners to a platform, maybe sending them to an 800 number or an email alias. And those partners that still need that help every day, both pre-sale and post-sale, really value having dedicated account management, having engineers that they can tap into, a real white glove service. So I definitely believe there's still a need, that there's a differentiation, and the services that we can provide both for our partners and for our vendors are really differentiated from the kind of the big 3 broadliners.
Justin, as I'm listening to Jason talk about that, it reminds me of a study we did for the Global Technology Distribution Council this year. And we asked partners, actually we conducted it last year, it was released in stages in the early part of this year. But we asked partners around the world about their experiences with distributors and who does it better, the vendors or the distributors. And almost across every category, whether it was quoting, fulfillment, support, marketing. Even one piece that surprised me was that they said that they got better support that resulted in better customer experiences from distributors than they did from their vendors. Is this the type of thing that you're steering into when you're talking about this leading with the services and support around a specialized category?
Yeah, I think a couple things, Larry, and I'm not surprised actually by the results of that survey that you did. Jason and I both have great respect for these scaled distributors, these broadliners. We know a lot of the teams in all of them. Um, but I think a couple of things that Jason mentioned, I think hold true, and that is niche service capabilities or emerging technologies and the ability to drive services around those technologies is an ongoing need for partners and for these vendors. And it's not well supported in the broadliners simply because those businesses are such that they can't allocate those resources. So there's an opportunity to not only identify and spin up some of these niche services or these newer service types, because partners need those capabilities to help them deploy and manage these emerging and evolving platforms, cybersecurity platforms specifically, and vendors. The demand from partners and customers for help in supporting those platforms through the entire customer journey of those platforms. The vendors are not really well equipped to support that, nor do they really want to be in that business. They want to sell software, they want to build platforms, they want to engineer technology. They don't want to be shepherding customers through that, that value optimization, so to speak, in those technologies. And the churn rates are fairly high. Unless the customer has specialized people that can optimize these platforms over time, they're really looking at partners and distributors to step in and help drive optimization, drive customer satisfaction and success, and ultimately get to renewal of these platforms. So that complexity is never going away, right? Platforms will emerge, they'll mature, adoption will, follow the traditional path or traditional curve. And I think we're in a good position to support the emergence and the scale of those platforms into maturity and beyond, while being nimble enough to find, where partners, where customers need help as they adopt these technologies, and ultimately get them to success on those technologies, which is not a given across a lot of these platforms.
Well, I mean, when you talk about being a security specialist or a secure network, um, that's a really tall order. Today there's more than 2,000 security vendors, depending on how you define that in markets worldwide, and that number doesn't seem to go down. It only seems to go up. And the one of the things I remember the last time I went to RSA, um, I used to be I came out of the security world before I came into the channel, so I used to be a fixture at RSA, but I don't go as often as I used to. The last time I went, I walked into the exhibit hall, and it was like looking at a wall. Like there's like impenetrable. Like it's like one of those like going into the old pictures of Kowloon where you just everything was just so dense. And I thought to myself, if I'm a customer, where do I go first? If I'm a partner, how do I navigate all this? And I mean, Jason, is that part of where you see exclusive not just being a backstop or a supporter of these security specialists or these security partners, but also a part of that is the navigation through
Mhm.
this maze of different providers?
Yeah, it's interesting. I share an anecdote from yesterday. In fact, I was on site with a large partner. They both have strong presence here in North America as well as global presence. And they have 3 full-time employees who do nothing but scour those next up and coming vendors in cybersecurity, in infrastructure, and then now in AI.
Hmm.
The average partner, though, can't afford 3 headcount that does nothing but each of them screening 200 new potential vendors every single month. Now they have the luxury, but most don't. So if you look, for example, exclusive network globally, we acquired a company a couple of years ago called Ignition. And we have since expanded that globally. We're looking to bring that into North America. That is a business that specifically focuses on what you're talking about, those, emerging vendors. It is almost like a portfolio approach where, if you bring 10 vendors in, help them to create a channel, help the partners to understand about the technology and the use cases for end users, that a few of them ultimately will be the next superstars. But we do have that type of capability, and we're doing all of that heavy lifting on that vendor evaluation, all of the criteria around the technology, their finance, their leadership team, et cetera, et cetera. We're doing all that on behalf of the partners so that once we are introducing solutions through exclusive networks to the partners, they can be confident that this is good technology, but also a company with staying power so they can introduce them to their end customers. And then Justin mentioned the services piece, a category like data security posture management, where in the last few years, CloudRise, the company exclusive acquired that Justin runs globally, this is a deep expertise, engineering and service delivery capabilities going back a few years. Vendors like Cyera, Big ID. Now you look at a Fortinet and Netscope has those capabilities. Those were areas where partners weren't early in, and didn't have bench strength. And so they can then tap into their distributor, their service provider to help them in those sorts of categories.
How do you stay on this theme for a minute? Because I think it's interesting, because I agree with you. I think that not to cast aspersions at any other company. I mean, they're like everybody knows. I think the world of TD SYNNEX and Ingram, they're great companies. Arrow is a great company. But you're right that their scale does have disadvantages at the same time, particularly if you're a mid-tier or a smaller company. It's hard to cut through the noise and get attention with them. Much the same as you do is like getting attention from a customer or even a partner. But for you you do have a relatively small line card, that focused but small line card. You do have a good presence in North America, and I know you've been growing for the past couple of years in North America, despite the low the challenges you have. But being in a cybersecurity market, that's tough in itself. How do you stay in front of what's important? How do you pick the next winner, and how do you get the partners to say, let's get excited about a brand that has some really interesting technology, but doesn't necessarily have the cachet to get a quick sale?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that and then hand it over to Justin. But, always there's two vectors. One is that I always believe in voice of partner, voice of customer guiding us and sending us in directions. That's why I want to be on the phone with a partner a day, I tell my team, or out in the field with a partner, because this is how I learn. The partners are on the front lines with their end customers. And the more that you learn from the partners, the better it informs your strategy for portfolio expansion or services portfolio expansion. On the other side, Exclusive Networks North America is a part of a global company. At last, earnings when we were publicly traded, you see we're around 6 billion euros. And so there's a lot of resource around the world in HQ and with that Ignition team that I can lean on for a lot of that market intelligence, the data, the vendor criteria, see which vendors that they have signed and added to the portfolio in various countries around the world, and growth of those vendors, how the technology is working, how they engage with the partner channel, their loyalty to the channel. So we can lean a lot on our global colleagues in order to help inform us on the decisions and the technologies that then we bring to market in the US. Justin?
Yeah, it's interesting, Larry. I think you said, I'll paraphrase what you were talking about, but the cybersecurity market is challenging. I think you're referring to the fact that it's crowded, it's noisy, it's competitive. There's all kinds of messaging flying around all the time, and I people that say things like that, I just say, where else would you rather be?
No,
Who's got it better than us? we're in arguably the greatest explosion or expanding IT opportunity in 30 years in cybersecurity. Yeah, it's noisy. Yeah, there's a ton of players. Yeah, there's a lot of repetitive type solutions and things of that nature. So we all deal with all of that. But I think if you peel all that back and you recognize the complexity that's facing the market, not only vendors who have to navigate through that and build feature function and differentiate themselves, but the partners that are faced with adopting and deploying, and the customers that are faced with getting value out of a increasingly complex stack. I think there's a huge opportunity. And it'd be one thing if we're talking about a declining market or a dying market or a market that had reached maturity and you're squeezing out nickels and dimes because the demand had flattened or the market was dying or it was some old. But that's not the case here. The case is there's always going to be emerging technology. There's always going to be innovation emerging. There's always going to be threats that this collective ecosystem is forced to deal with. And because of that, we can go head to head with the broadliners and compete and do so in a nimble, agile, niche fashion by bringing technology, by bringing engineering, by bringing service capabilities to help vendors deploy it, partners use it and sell it to customers, and ultimately customers derive value out of it. So I think that complexity. I want to say I had the same reaction. I just overwhelmed, like. And we had a little booth at my last company in RSA, and it was so hard. It was overwhelming, but I think that gives us an opportunity to really make progress and grow the business and serve needs of partners and vendors and their customers that may be being overlooked today.
Yeah. And just for clarification here, it was a small booth, but at least it was expensive. So. And and I was gonna.
I've never been so lonely in my life, sitting in that booth waiting for somebody to talk to me.
Yeah, I was gonna make a joke though, because when you said where else would you want to be, there's no other place like security. I'm like, I'm gonna make a note of that for the AI companies. But the truth is that as much as we're tracking a few different trend lines that we think are going to converge: AI, quantum computing, robotics. We think these are things that are going to converge and create some real magic in the not too distant future. But the buttresses that are always there, cloud's always going to be there, data management's always going to be there, and security is always going to be the imperative. And I can't agree with you more. But Justin, I think one of the things that still also confounds us is that as much as we want to call some of these partners to be specialists and really highly regarded, so Jason, you're talking about who you were meeting with, and we won't say who. We know who it is. Highly capable organization, but not all are. And even when you call themselves a managed security service provider, it doesn't necessarily mean they have full levels of competency. Is that also part of this? Is that what you're describing here, Justin? Is that there is that there is still a need out there, not just to not to go it alone. That the security is so complex that we do need to lean on others in order to get to the right outcomes.
It's the classic investment conundrum, Larry, I think, and regardless of a particular partner's inherent capability, every partner, regardless of size, has to make investment decisions. Where am I going to invest and build out internal capability? Engineering, delivery talent to manage or to deploy and manage customers on specific technologies. And most partners will make certain selections on where they're going to invest and build out internal capability, but they can't cover everything. And so those partners need folks like Exclusive and our services capability to come in and fill in the gaps, distribution in general, to fill in those gaps, to bring the expertise required, the engineering talent required to deliver those solutions that they themselves won't invest in directly or internally. So especially as those solutions get more complex, more components in it, more vendor components in any given solution, that becomes, the calculus that every partner has to go through. And that's been the case, for all of time. But I really think in cyber it's accelerating because partners, again, regardless of size or scale or scope, will make decisions on things they're not going to do themselves, right? A technology or a particular capacity or an engineering functionality that I'm not going to do myself, and I'll always use partners to deliver that. And that's where we can come in and add a lot of value to a lot of these partners, regardless of size.
Jason, so they brought you on to lead this. Both of you are well known in the channel community, North America channel community. Exclusive, still not as widely known. So what's the goal here? What's the ambition for where do you take this? Is it to make Exclusive as big of a brand in North America as it is in the rest of the world? Because it's got a great footprint in other parts of the world, but not as much here. So where do you see this going?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we see huge upside. One, the growth of the category, as Justin had mentioned, in the cybersecurity. If you read different analyst reports, I mean, it's still high double-digit growth. So we have a huge upside. There's an incredible TAM right now. I'd love for the brand Exclusive Networks to be as strong, as widely known, as credible reputation here in North America as it is globally. What vendors need in a SaaS environment is changing than a pure hardware environment. That has created an incredible amount of opportunities for distribution, for Exclusive Networks. When Justin had mentioned adoption, time to first value, full feature adoption, outcome-based services, when I mentioned earlier, expansion, retention, reduction of churn, that creates a ton of opportunities for us, both with our partners and our vendors. So we'd love to continue to grow, we'd love to have better brand recognition, and then deliver on the value proposition once you do recognize the brand. And that's going to be really about helping partners and their customers and our vendors throughout the entire lifecycle.
So what's the big rock in your way? What is it that you need to, what is the thing that you think you need to overcome in order to achieve that?
Give us a shot, right? There are a number of vendors that are out there at all phases that potentially they're in distribution, ecosystem in the US, only one or two of the broadliner. And so, we want a shot to be able to show the difference, the value add, how we can help to grow the business as a very nimble and specialized distributor. As we build a brand, as we're out there building relationships with existing and new vendors, I think there's an opportunity for them to have a distribution landscape that has a specialist like Exclusive Networks, and then potentially one of the broadliners as a really good balance.
Justin, I'm going to let you have the last word here. What is it you want the vendors in the security community to know about Exclusive and where you can take them?
I'd mirror what Jason said. I think give us an opportunity to show you the difference. I think our technical depth, our engineering capability, specifically around some of these evolving cyber platforms, our ability to shepherd customers through the adoption and into value realization and long-term success, that's indisputable. We've got a lot of capability that we can bring to bear to help partners fill in those gaps and deliver customer success. And for the vendors, we understand the adoption and churn problem out there. We know it, right? And we can help address partners or customers that are struggling with that adoption and value realization, and we can improve the ability for partners and customers to adopt this technology and stay with it long term and get significant value from it. So, give us the shot and we'll show you the difference.
Very good. Jason, Beal, Justin Crotty, thank you for joining us here on Changing Channels. It was great talking with you as always.
Great to see you, Larry.
Yeah,
thanks for having us.
Good to see you, Larry.
That's about all the time we have for this edition of Changing Channels. Again, I want to thank my guests, Jason Beal, President, and Justin Crotty, the Vice President of Services and Support at Exclusive Networks North America, for joining us today. I also want to thank all of you for joining us. I really appreciate your support and listening into these conversations. We do these podcasts to help you understand what's happening in the world around us and also give you some ideas about how you can make your channels better. Speaking of making channels better, check out the great content, research, and services we have at Channelnomics. We provide the support, the resources, and the insight to vendors to help them understand what the trends are, how to capitalize on them with partners, and to develop programs that are based on true evidence, data, and research to help them make great decisions that result in higher levels of performance. Well, everyone, thanks again for joining us. Until next time, I'm Larry Walsh.